In this video series, I'm going to go over how to draw a cutting plane line and how to adjust line type scales. I'm going to start off in detail on one problem in particular to help you through the first exercise, but then at the end I'm going to show you some other special cases of how to draw a cutting plane line. So cutting plane lines are used to show where an object is sectioned or cut, and it's important that you show that on your drawings to convey to whoever reads your drawings where the object was cut. So I'm looking at this drawing in your text, and for this particular problem I'm actually giving you a drawing file with a front, right side, and top view that I've constructed for you. And I'm looking at your text at the cutting plane line that's shown, and I want to bring up a couple of things. Now for this particular exercise, the instructions are to create a top view in section. Well, as you read through the chapter, you figured out that the arrows for the cutting plane line point away from the section view. Okay, so since we're doing a top view in section, we're actually going to draw our cutting plane line arrows pointing straight down. Okay, the other thing I want to point out is that the arrows for the cutting plane line are outside of the visible edges of the object. This is on purpose, okay? For this particular exercise, the text showed the arrows 1 unit outside the object. And it doesn't have to be 1 unit. It just needs to be a little bit outside of the object on each side, and preferably the spacing between the arrowhead and the edge of the object should be the same on each side. So that's something I'll discuss as we go through here. Now, I'm going to do this a little bit different than I've done it in the past, and the reason why is because your text actually, and I knew this of course, but in the past I haven't been as exact, but I want to show you the exact way to do this, and the easiest way to do it is through paper space. Okay, you always draw your model in model space. Okay, and usually paper space is reserved for your title block or dimensioning, but I'm actually going to put the cutting plane line in paper space, and if you decide, when you go to work that you don't really like putting your cutting plane line in paper space, there's a way to move it after the fact. So I'll show you that too. But let's kind of try to do what they have in the book there again, except I'm going to point my arrows down. So the first thing I want to do is actually scale my viewport. Okay, and I'm going to click on the viewport here, and I want to pick a scale that works. Okay, and I'm going to pick the scale of 1 to 4. Okay, then I want to lock my viewport. Okay, and I'm going to go back to model space just very quickly, and I'm going to show you the annotative scaling. I'm going to change this annotation scale to the same scale I just changed my viewport, and then I'll type RE and then enter, and you can see that my line types are displaying now the same in model space as they are in paper space. Okay, now I'm going to add my my cutting plane line. Now I've already created the cutting layer, and the parameters for creating that layer are in the Angel instructions, so you need to create that layer on your own. But what I'm going to use to create this is a polyline. Now the reason I want to use a polyline versus a regular line is because you can assign properties to a polyline that you cannot assign to a regular line, and that's something that we really need to do here. So I'm going to start off with PL and then enter. Okay, before I go any further, I need to check something on my settings here. I'm going to right click on the object snap box and go to settings. Make sure that object snap on is checked and object snap tracking on is checked. And by the way, these are the running object snaps that I generally have working in the background. Okay, so you may want to set yours as the same. So just somewhere in this area right here, I'm going to left click. Okay, and that'll be the first point of that'll be the zero width end, if you will, of my arrowhead. Okay, and to create the arrowhead, I'm going to define a width for my polyline. So I just want to type W, enter. My starting width will be 0, so I'll just type in 0, enter. My ending width, now if you look through your reading in the text, your cutting plane line style, you'll see that the arrowhead should be drawn at a 30-degree angle, and the length of the arrowhead should be 1.4 times the letter height. Okay, um, and that's actually why I'm doing this in paper space, because it depending on your viewport scale, if you were to do this in model space, your dimensions could get skewed. Okay, so what I've worked out here to come up with those approximate dimensions in paper space is to use an ending width of 0.1. Okay, and it said that the arrowhead should be 1.4 times the text height, which would be the arrowhead length would be 0.175. Okay, so I'll just type that in as my next point while the crosshairs are pointed straight up. Okay, and you can see that it created the arrowhead for me, and that arrowhead is approximately 30 degrees, and it's the right length. Okay, I need to redefine my width at this point, so I'll type in W, enter. My starting width will be 0, enter. My ending width will be 0, and then enter. Okay, so now this next step is why I wanted to make sure the object snap tracking was turned on. I'm still in the Polyline command, by the way. So I want to go near the center point of the circle, and once I see the center point snap, I want to pull my crosshairs to the left, and you'll notice I have a vertical and horizontal line at this point. Once I see both of those, I just want to left click. It's kind of like an intersection point. But you want to make sure that you're on the right snap. Okay, so kind of look across and make sure that you're on the center of the circle, and then you can left click, and then I'll go through the object, and once I get to about the same spacing from here to here as I do on the left side, on the right I'll left click again, and then I want to go down, but how far? Okay, well let's let this arrow that we've already defined tell us how far. So you see how I came and just let my crosshairs rest there, and then pull it to the right. Okay, and you can see the tracking line, and once I see the vertical line cross it, I can left click, and now I need to redefine my width, so I'll type in W, enter, and my starting width will be 0.1, enter. My ending width will be 0, enter, and I just need to pull this straight down and type in 0.175 and then enter. Okay, and now escape, and now I have my cutting plane line. Okay, so that's this is a fairly simple example of how to do a full section. By the way, I told you if you remember my width here, if I measure it, is 0.1. Okay, if you decide for some reason later in the future that you need this cutting plane line to actually be in model space, just transfer it here, and you can use the change space command, CH space, enter, and I can select the cutting plane line and then enter, and you can see that AutoCAD actually moves the object into model space. Okay, but this is what I was talking about viewport scale. If I were to just measure, I'm going to just draw a line kind of from corner to corner here, and then click on the line, and I'll look in the properties panel, you can see that the line width is 0.4. Okay, so the arrow width here is 0.4, which is twice as long as what we specified, or I'm sorry, 4 times as long as what we specified here. It's because the viewport scale. Okay, this is a quarter scale, so to get the same effect, it's kind of confusing. But to get the same line to show up from model space into paper space, we would have to compensate for the viewport scale, and that's why I suggest that you actually draw the cutting plane line in paper space like I started off. So I'm going to click undo and bring this line, cutting plane line, back into paper space where I created it, and leave it there. Okay, so this is a very simple example. While we're here, I want to explain line type scale. So let me do something else. Alright, now my viewport is not activated. I know this because it's not bold. Okay, I'll double click outside of the viewport to unbold it, okay, or deactivate it. Let me just draw a line kind of next to the dashes on the hidden line. And if I click on that line, you can see the length of that line is 0.18.